Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the WCG Grand Final 2012 in Kunshan, China. I'm Kaldor, and with me is Wolf for StarCraft 2.
Yep, it's time for StarCraft 2 action. First up, we've got LoWeLy versus YongHwa here. And this is going to be a pretty exciting main stage match. You know, YongHwa definitely making a big splash in GSTL very recently. And this guy is a top-notch LGIM player, regarded as many to be the best Korean team, up against a really strong foreigner that many people know about as well.
We have 3 Korean players in this StarCraft 2 event. We have Marine King, of course, parting, and YongHwa. YongHwa, on the other hand, lost earlier to the Chinese player in his group, so he's struggling a little bit more than he expected. And now, as mentioned, he's up against LoWeLy, a strong Zerg player who did quite well at WCS Global Finals, the Blizzard tournament that we just had 2 weeks ago here in Shanghai. So right now for YongHwa, there's really a lot on the line. He has to play his best. He's playing his opponent on Cloud Kingdom, and this is going to be a best of 1.
And based, of course, off of his nationality, Korea, he is actually the highest ranked Korean right now. Playing as Protoss here at WCG, of course, it is his main race, and this guy is definitely one of the favorites to take this entire tournament, and being down against a Chinese player is definitely going to be something that's on his mind right now.
One of the biggest problems that he's going to face here is that if he's up against a player like LoWeLy, he always has to be careful about strategies that might surprise him a little bit. Because the thing is that LoWeLy was able to take a lot of games from good players at the WCS Global Final by just executing builds that they did not expect. Drop play, for example. Not your standard 200 supply roach push that we sometimes see from players like TSL Pyun, but he just tries to go for the drop play and add it to his standard build. For example, dropping a few Zerglings in his opponent's main and third at the same time while attacking at the natural. All these strategies that make him just so unpredictable.
Yeah, he's absolutely unpredictable. Not only is he good at doing these multitasking attacks and certain timings, he's really good at all-ins in the early game as well. I remember watching LoWeLy in the early stage of StarCraft 2 after release when he was first really playing really well in a lot of online tournaments. I remember he was really good at certain all-ins, knowing how to hide from his opponent what he was doing. He's so good at that, and that makes him a scary opponent to face in this best-of-1 situation, especially for YongHwa, who's already down a game in this group.
One of the things that you can definitely say about LoWeLy is that he didn't really change his style completely, but early on he was a player who was really kind of all-in-ish. He was like very, very aggressive, and even if he didn't execute an all-in, he just keep crushing, just keep going for it, and especially against Protoss, he was so aggressive. These days, he still preserved this aggression, but he's just playing it with a follow-up, playing it a little bit safer, a little bit more well thought out. So this is definitely something that might give YongHwa a bit of a problem here.
Yeah, he definitely knows how to transition very well after his aggressive plays. The map here is shown. It is Cloud Kingdom. Remember, this is a best of 1. Both players only having 1 shot in this game to take out this player. And I'm really curious to see what sort of strategy LoWeLy's going to do. I think YongHwa is going to do more of the stereotypical metagame type builds we're seeing right now. Some type of immortal push, maybe taking a third base on Cloud Kingdom. That's something he could go for.
And on the other hand, you have always the option for the Zerg player to just go for a really aggressive strategy. We've seen Roach pushes on this map, we've seen Bailing Bust, something that you usually don't expect as a Protoss player, especially those Bailings. They might hit you completely blindsided because you don't expect it. You expect a straight-up game, at least in the early game here. So what is your opponent going to do? Maybe even starting off with a little bit of an earlier pull. Unlikely on Cloud Kingdom, but something that LoWeLy has executed in the past really well.
Yeah, he really has, and that's something he's known for. YongHwa probably hasn't had too much time to research his opponent, but it looks like we are going to start game number 1 right away here. It's countdown started, man.
Exactly, it is time to jump into game number 1 here at the WCG Grand Final 2012. LoWeLy versus YongHwa. We're ready to go in just a second here. Loading screen still on screen. And one of the things actually that I want to point out is that LoWeLy is also one of those players who really likes to open things up with a bit of an earlier pool. Usually against Protoss he plays with a 12 pool. Doesn't go for the 14 pool, which is kind of the standard that you see these days against Protoss, and into hatch, but tries to play a little bit different, which gives him a bit more flexibility and also forces the earlier defense out of the Protoss player.
Yeah, it definitely helps you against any sort of shenanigans the Protoss may be planning as well. Very safe pool timing. It hurts your economy only slightly if your opponent goes for a very fast cannon. But see what build he's going to do here. Both players now almost completely loaded. We are going to jump into the map right away. You can see shots of him down here, of course. YongHwa on the left representing Korea, and on the right we have LoWeLy representing Belarus.
And now starting in the game, starting to the top right of Cloud Kingdom in red, we have the Korean player. It is LGIM's YongHwa.
There he is. You can see a reflection of all the crowd, actually, in his hat.
Yeah. And at the same time, starting to the bottom left of the map, cross position to his Protoss opponent, we have the player from Belarus starting for Team FXO. It is LoWeLy. Our Zerg player here, really aggressive Zerg, starts very often with the 12 pull against Protoss. Just mentioned it a little bit, Wolf pointed out he only loses a bit of economy, whereas it gives him more flexibility and usually forces the Protoss player to go for a bit of a safer build. He won't be dropping down that Nexus as eagerly as he usually would.
Yeah, certainly. And we'll see what YongHwa has planned on this map. LoWeLy is, of course, a player who can watch a lot of GSL matches, watch a lot of GSTL, and study these Korean players because they're broadcasted live so often. Whereas the opposite case might be a little bit tough for LoWeLy to actually see what YongHwa, or rather make YongHwa see what LoWeLy's up to.
I actually talked a little bit about him or with him and the coaches, and you're certainly right. There are not that many games around for LoWeLy. The only thing that YongHwa could really study, and he actually studied all of these players that he has in the group because he has very high ambitions for this tournament. He was able to watch these games that LoWeLy played at WCS Global Finals and a few other matches. So he's seen the Zerg play in action against Protoss, knows about his drop play, and should not be surprised by the by these small nuances that LoWeLy likes to add to his game.
Yeah, definitely so. And that's a good point. It's good insight that you have there, that he studied all these players. YongHwa goes Forge first here, not taking a big risk, not going for any cannoning either. His probe, of course, has already seen the pool. He's going to try to deny that, the hatchery a little bit. Double cancel goes down, he spots that. Just getting a few extra lings out here.
And this group is going to be really intense. As mentioned earlier, we had YongHwa losing against Maxset, and this is one of the groups where we already are short one player, so every single game is just so much more important than if you are in a 6-player group. There are only 5 players in this group. We have YongHwa, we have the Canadian player FireZerg, we have LoWeLy, Maxset, and also Mojon from... I actually don't know where this guy is from. I cannot see what this flag is.
Well, I have to say...
I have to point it out again.
Maxset is definitely a tough opponent to deal with. One of China's best players for sure.
He definitely is.
And YongHwa, of course, now drops the gateway. His wall is completed. He can block that with a Zealot. He has to be careful if Lings come in. But right now, since he's already spotted the Lings of LoWeLy, he should be totally fine here. He sends his probe back, though. And the second probe wants to check for the third.
Yeah, right now, of course, one of the things that LoWeLy has to concern himself with is what kind of tech choice we'll see later on from YongHwa. He needs to be sure that against an Immortal push, he will have his defense up at the same time. His objective kind of is to survive for as long as possible. The longer the game drags out, the better for the Protoss play usually. Whereas on the other hand, Cloud Kingdom is still one of these maps where we have a lot of late game scenarios. Protoss players trying to go for a huge carrier fleet, for example. This is a style that we've seen by a lot of players these days, actually.
Yeah, the late game can really be very interesting in this matchup. It kind of, to me personally, feels like it depends on the Protoss style. The Zerg generally makes Broodlords and Infestors no matter what, but some Protosses tend to deal with the late game differently. Some cut the mothership out entirely and try to avoid that type of engagement. And otherwise, of course, we have... So we're having a bit of audio trouble here suddenly, guys. Hopefully you guys are not at home as well. But there are several different ways the Protoss can play in the late game, as going back to...
Right now we have speed just being started, also the +1 attack upgrade for the Protoss player. So the one thing that we really have to see from LoWeLy is how he starts to approach this. So far, we didn't really see a Roach 1 going down for him. Usually that happens around 7 minutes, 7:20. That's the time when you really want to prepare for your opponent's push. But YongHwa didn't decide yet on what kind of tech he wants to, or what kind of choice he wants to execute against this opponent here.
Yeah. Nice micro here by the Zealot, putting it in between the Watchtower and the wall so that he can minimize the surface area for the Lings to attack. And nice pulls back there, gets the best trade possible out of that Zealot.
Yeah, that Zealot was definitely in a really good position here, holding that Zanaga Watchtower for as long as possible. And the one thing that he can also say is that currently we have for LoWeLy a very good Overlord spread. Yeah. He really makes sure that he has all these paths controlled where the probe can actually try to move in. And so At this point, he already sees the probe. He sees that there's nothing coming at the right side of the map. He controls the left side as well with another Overlord that has a good vision. So there are a lot of points that he can actually now use to make sure that there is no way for YongHwa to slip in a forward pylon.
Yeah,
so
and
he
also
really knows everything that's happening here.
He can also make sure that there's no information about the third base if he spots the probes early enough with the coverage he has. Because right now, he's actually taken all of his gases. He's getting a lair off of 2 bases, getting double evolution chambers, which means he's going to be getting the upgrades, but he still has no third hatch.
And one of the things that is also really important here is that you can see he heads down a different path from what we usually see a Zerg player do. There is no Roach Warren for him. He's playing this a little bit Dimaga style, going for the Baneling Nest and the double upgrades, trying to have something against the push where he has to deal with Zealots and also, of course, with Stalkers. But he's not going to use Roaches for this. He's trying to execute it with Banelings, and he doesn't even have to, because right now we don't have this push that we usually see executed with the Immortals. Instead, we have now 3 additional gateways added, +1 is completed, +2 is started, and Blink.
Yeah, this could be an aggressive attack coming out for YongHwa, but very easily as well, if he sees what's going on with this Observer, he could just decide to take a third base and play the later game. Knowing the Infestation Pit is there this early, though, is so important because he is going to need to have an answer for that, because with the Infestation Pit coming out this early, he can actually use that to hold off Blink Stalker aggression if he gets the Infestors out in time.
A Blink Stalker aggression here by YongHwa would be committing suicide. There's just nothing that could stop LoWeLy. Well, maybe with the perfect forward blink and picking off the Infestors if they are exposed, you can try to immediately shut down the Zerg player's option. But if you don't do that, then suddenly you will be faced with a fungal, your Stalkers can't get away, and then the Zerglings are just going to town. And now we have actually also, in addition to the Infestors, we have the job upgrade that we talked about earlier. This play that YongHwa so loves, where he tries to drop Lings in the opponent's base.
That's certainly what we're probably going to see coming up here into the next stage of the game. Now, as soon as YongHwa saw the third base being so late, he immediately started his Nexus because he realized at this point, okay, your expansion is so late that you're going to have enough tech to actually defend me here, so I'm just going to take my Nexus, and even though my Nexus is slightly behind your third, normally a Zerg player would have a third much faster than that, so I feel ahead here to just defensively take my own Nexus.
You can really see that YongHwa studied his opponent's replays, because he does not prepare against Roaches. We don't see a single Immortal in the game. This guy is just going for pure upgrades, he's going for Blink Stalkers, and he adds his Robotic Spay immediately. He's like, yeah, well, you're not going to play with Roaches. I double check with my Observer, I see that you're doing exactly what you did at WCS Global Finals. I don't need Immortals.
Exactly. At this point, you know, he's prepared exactly what he's studied. At this point, Overlord speed, though, as well is being finished for LoWeLy, and even though YongHwa has studied a little bit, defending against multi-prong Zergling drops can be very difficult in the mid to late game, especially when you're out moving with your army. If you have a Pro-S army, you want to keep it together, because without the army together, it's not as strong, it's not as useful. So that's when LoWeLy is going to try to go for some backstabs, like this, for example, just sending 2 Lings in, trying to catch some probes.
And I'm really interested to see how he's going to use the drop play. Usually what he does is trying to get into the main base, trying to get into the natural, using all these points to distract his opponent and then go for a massive attack. But we had a style for Zerg for a long time where Zerg tried to just drop on their opponent's base with Baneling bombs. That could be something that LoWeLy tries to do here, but it kind of fell out of style because Protoss players just dealt so beautiful with it, used their Blink Stalkers in a very good fashion, just made sure that the Banelings couldn't do anything.
Yeah, you're right, and as long as you can make sure the Banelings don't connect, they're just wasted gas. This is really scary, though, what LoWeLy is moving forward with, because if you consider as well that now he's got his 4th base up, he's got the drone count, he needs just a few more and he'll actually have great saturation. When you fungal, there's no way to avoid the Banelings. You can't blink out, and that becomes a big problem.
It's just a combination that you try to pull off. You try to go for all these different spells and find a synergy that your opponent is not ready for. And at this point, YongHwa with the 3rd base is of course in a position where he feels kind of comfortable, but he knows that there's something coming and he has to stop it. And there we have those Banelings, we have the Overlords. So it looks like LoWeLy is more going for a massive attack instead of just dropping a few Zerglings into his opponent's base, which is what he did at WCS Global Finals. He's still sticking to the drop play, but he's mixing it up a little bit. But even if the Overlords are heading straight for the 3rd base, if there are no Stalkers to intercept them, the economy will be in terror.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you try to pull your probes, if the Banelings have speed, or if they get in there, you are in a lot of trouble. But this is exactly what this is observed for. LoWeLy is spotted here by YongHwa. How will YongHwa respond?
Yeah, but SoFi could also be a little bit of a bad rally. Well, with the Zerglings moving in now.
Actually, that's what it starts to look like here. Now he can see everything.
Is he trying to go in there? Yes, but he has already been spotted. Creep really pushed forward, by the way, by LoWeLy, not skipping on those creep tumors.
Absolutely not. Even using his Overlord spread here to help it out. And we could see some great bumbles here. Stalkers are locked down, and the force fields are a little bit late. And here come the Banelings.
The force field donut is good, and the Banelings come in, and immediately the drop. The Stalkers trying to get out of the oven. They are fungal, and they can't use the blink. And now suddenly those Colossi are exposed. The Zerglings trying to chase them down one by one. One of them already dead. The Warp Prism with the Warp in, but another Baneling volley by these Overlords.
And this time it's mostly Zealots coming in on the Warp Ins. That's not what you want against Banelings, but LoWeLy still dropping its supply, takes the supply lead and drops some Infested Terrans. This is not the best trade for YongHwa, of course. He's down in economy, doesn't have a fourth base even started, but now he's got the army advantage.
Bit of a mistake here by LoWeLy. On the other hand, he didn't really take care of his defenses, and a beautiful blink forward. Traps them, surrounds them. That was Warcraft 3 style right there. Beautiful surround, takes them down, and now suddenly LoWeLy has to be careful. Those Zerglings are trying to close the distance. The Corruptors don't do anything here. Dead supply in the air, only taking out the Warp Prism.
Getting the Warp Prism is, of course, useful. You're so right, with no Colossi here, they're not very useful, but the Lings are taking out the last of the Stalkers, and YongHwa is in a bit of trouble if he loses these Stalkers.
Oh my god, Wolf, he's not only in a little bit of trouble.
He's losing almost every single one of them. The last one will blink once and get away, but now he's down in supply.
And look at his face. He's completely frustrated here. We have 2-2 Zerglings for LoWeLy, and he's moving in. He's using the Corruption on the Corruptors. Beautiful move here by LoWeLy. Not skipping on these additional skills at all, at the Stalkers blinking out, but this opens up the expansion for further attacks.
Exactly, and these Lings are doing so much damage. They're heavily upgraded here. Even one Broodling morphing at this stage in the game. A Broodling morphing on top of his base is a bit aggressive.
Oh, wow. Yeah, morphing one of the overseers here, and this is definitely like a big problem here for him. He's already down to 98 supply against 146, and look at this bank for LoWeLy, man. He's at 1,400 minerals, just dropping everything now in the unit production. 4 bases against 3. He's looking at a beautiful economy.
And LoWeLy's not overextending himself here. He's pulling back. He still has that beautiful creep spread. He's even moving the Queen up right now. This is the Observer seeing everything. He can even take it out now with the Queen. These Broodlords have been spotted by LoWeLy, but he only has, or rather by YongHwa, he only has 9 Stalkers. He's got no Mothership tech.
And LoWeLy's looking at this as like, hey buddy, you can spot them all day long. What are you going to do about it? You have 9 Stalkers left.
He's got no 4th base. He's just now starting that 4th Nexus. He's got no way to deal with the Broodlords. LoWeLy is not going to let him keep this Nexus. No way.
A little bit of a low infestor count here, only at 3, but if he executes it well, he can do a good amount of damage. He still has 54 Zerglings, and as long as those 5 Corruptors are able to just pressure the 2 Colossi, and the Zerglings don't die, that's all that he needs on the ground to keep those Stalkers at bay.
And the Broodlords are actually going for the natural. He just wants to start picking away at production rather than engaging at the 4th base where he may have an army disadvantage out in the open ground. He's got the Infestors now to support. Remember, he's fighting off creep here a little bit, but there's so many Lings and Banelings, it's hard for the Stalkers to actually blink underneath.
YongHwa is in such a terrible position right now. He's already down 1 game in this group. He really has to fight for it. But here comes now his opponent, and we have a big battle in front of us with 196 supply. LoWeLy is nearly maxed out up against 140 of YongHwa, but we have already a couple of units dropped at the top right of the natural.
Yeah, there are some units streaming into the main base, but here is the main fight.
He's everywhere, man. He's attacking the natural. He's taking down the main army. Those Corruptors hunting down the Colossi one by one, and the Stalkers, they're already gone.
Yep, there's no anti-air really left here to deal with the Broodlords, and in the main base, he's got another problem. This Nexus is not going to be here much longer. The Broodlords will target it down the cannonballs even without a cancel.
The units at the natural, they have been killed by now. Those Overlords did a great job dropping them down, but the 4th base, as Wolf just pointed out, it is in trouble. Here come a few desperate Stalkers, but the Broodlords are in position and reinforcements are on their way.
Yep. LoWeLy has to be careful, but so far he is. You know, he just knows exactly when to fight the Nexus and when to fight the army. If he's not going to send any units, any probes to mine at that Nexus, he doesn't have to kill the Nexus right away. He wants to keep this army small so that his Broodlords will always be safe, but he's now vulnerable. Where are the bubbles?
Oh, wow, this blink forward was beautiful. The position is a good one. He's trying to do as much damage as possible. Suddenly the Zerglings streaming in. A lot of the Banelings detonating at the Archons, but here come the rest of them, and those Stalkers, they're exposed, they go down, but most of the Broodlords are already gone.
Yeah, and even though he lost a lot of units, the supply is just double for LoWeLy. He has so much bank, he can easily remax.
He has 1,800, and that's the GG. YongHwa loses to LoWeLy after losing to Max Set. a big problem here for the Korean Protoss player. Just look at his face.
Having high hopes for this tournament and losing to 2 foreigners in a row. First to Mixed, now of course to LoWeLy, and really impressive play though, I have to say, from the Belarus Zerg.
Yeah, very well done. LoWeLy with a great performance here, taking a good position in the group now. And ladies and gentlemen, this is it for the first StarCraft 2 game here on the main stage. And we are jumping back into Dota 2 next. The first game of the Dota 2 group before we head back into Warcraft 3 WCG 2012 Grand Final in Kuncheon.